each year a significant amount of people subject themselves to a lifestyle choice which completely obliterates their health and body, like even more than taking advice from the plus size influencer who claims eating more chocolate was actually the cause of her 1.3 pound weight loss journey. You know, even more detrimental than going to Burning Man to find yourself. Which says a lot, right? And I'm talking about night shifts, yeah? We got insomnia, GI distress, cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, desire to become a TikTok influencer slash alpha male coach. Yeah, that's a pretty rough fate. Bad mood swings, vehicle accidents, social isolation. Shall I go on? The human body is a well-oiled machine. It relies on timing to secrete a lot of different hormones and neurotransmitters that keep your body moving properly. And how do we keep these all in check to make sure everything works? Well, it's tied to timing. And how is it tied to timing? Your circadian rhythm, your sleep timing. So you kind of see where I'm going with sleep and night shifts. Everything just explodes. So working night shifts and trying to regulate all these things is like setting an alarm, but you can't set a time to it. You just know the alarm's gonna go off at some point. So when you're working nights and not sleeping, it's like getting into a manual car, except the gearbox is randomized. Your 3 pedals, your clutch, your accelerator, and your brake is all randomized too. So you drop the clutch, you accelerate, but the only thing that happens is your windows go down and you start indicating left, all the while you're wondering where the steering wheel is and why you're doing this all from the back seat. So enough with the terrible analogies, let's get into why this is actually happening, right? So let's start with ghrelin. Ghrelin makes you feel hungry, and this is elevated, okay? Leptin, some people say it's gonna be decreases, a little bit of evidence there, but basically you're more likely to overeat, and this correlates with the increased fasting glucose and the increased blood lipids, neither of which are ideal. This whole cortisol is meant to taper off in the evening to help you secrete melatonin and help you sleep. This also regulates insulin. And, you know, if your cortisol is dropping off, your insulin sensitivity becomes worse as well, which means you can't really metabolize carbs, and, you know, that blood sugar might be an issue later on. It might help develop diabetes and, you know, overeating and obesity. A lot of bad things, also just general inflammation. Like, there's a whole laundry list of things there. As well, with the ghrelin, you're more likely to want to overeat because you're at night, you know, your ghrelin's high, so you're choking down at 2 a.m. like a McDonald's share box, like the really big one, because the ghrelin's so high. You're hungry, but then your body can't do anything with it because the insulin sensitivity is so bad. I'm tripping on my words, dude. Which further causes the weight gain. It's like a complete mess. We all know the sleep health is going to be terrible. This is largely because melatonin is not only tied to timing, but also just light, right? In a dark room, we're going to secrete melatonin, but the issue is if you're coming home, you know, commuting home in the morning in daylight, how are you going to sleep, dude? It's going to be hard. As well, it's going to be secreting if you're like in a dark environment during the night shift. So you're going to feel tired, which, you know, a lot of people end up over-consuming caffeine, which becomes a problem later when they actually have to sleep. And then they have higher cortisol because it's the morning, which dumps the melatonin secretion. So your sleep, it's going to be hard to sleep. You're going to be feeling so tired, but you can't sleep. And what happens when you can't sleep? Well, you feel terrible. You can't really recover from your work or your training that you might be doing. And all your hormones go out of whack even more, like insulin and ghrelin. They get like even more damage, so that just cycles back to the absolute start of this and reinforces everything. So the worse insulin response and the ghrelin might cause you to overeat, as well the fatigue might cause you to exercise less, which further might add to the weight gain and insulin insensitivity. So like things just get deteriorated so quickly. If you're on Dream, please be sure to drop a like and consider subscribing. It's free, helps me out, and actually boosts your tests as well, which is clinically proven. As well, with your sleep tanking, so does your testosterone, which furthers all of these issues. You know, weight gain becomes more of a risk. You know, you're probably not exercising as much. You are probably in a bad mood and lower energy. If you, again, I could list like 50 things here. So you can see with all these arrows like circling back to the start and linking all with each other, the longer you stay on this and don't have things dialed in, the more of an issue it becomes, and, you know, eventually it will break you. So you end up with metabolic syndrome, which is like obesity, insulin resistance / diabetes, blood lipids are elevated, you're overweight, you feel terrible, crash test, like, you see where this goes, right? So how do you actually deal with this? Yeah, well, you could get another job. That's what I'd recommend. That's what I did. I was working 4 a.m. starts briefly. It's not fully night shift, but it was enough to be really annoying. And, you know, With so many moving parts with sleep and hormonal balances and your food, your training, it's really hard to get things properly dialed in because there's just so much to deal with and manage. So, you can theory craft all you want, which I will in a minute, but it's also worthy just taking advice from other people that do the night shifts and have made it work somehow, or like it kind of work. It's never going to be ideal, right? So some of the advice I found from people online is like, oh, you definitely need blackout curtains, you need a fan to block out the noise because it's noisy during the day. Drink a lot of water because everyone crams energy drinks and coffee to stay awake, and then they can't sleep later. Napping before your shifts can't help, so you're awake, just for a shorter period of time. Making sure you're not eating, overeating to crash sleep health, but you don't want to be undereating before bed so that you wake up hungry in the middle of the night, furthering your bad sleep. So that's not really ideal. And above all else, unless your body somehow likes being nocturnal, find another job. That's probably the quickest fix here. So what can we do to actually alleviate some of these biological changes? So to help with the decreased testosterone, TRT baby. No, you probably shouldn't, but like, it kind of has there's an argument there. I'm not going to make it, but there is one. But no, that's going to be more reliant on your sleep. But we'll get into that. Starting with insulin and your training, I think because your insulin sensitivity is weaker during the nighttime, you probably want to have your carbs front loaded, in the afternoon, maybe sort of your technical morning after you wake up, but it's probably afternoon. So have your carbs there. That way you can fuel the training, and then the training will cause your cortisol to be a little bit more elevated during the night, which will help you stay alert and stave off that melatonin production, and potentially even improve insulin insensitivity during that overnight period. And then during the overnight period, you're eating less carbs because your insulin sensitivity isn't as good. So carbs at the start of the day, less so later on, exercise early, and of course, as always, try and distance that last meal before bed. Don't go to bed hungry, but if you can space that out but still feel satiated by bedtime, but it's not really that food disrupting your sleep. It's a fine line there, especially when you're messing with all sorts of other factors. It can be hard to get right, but a decent meal a few hours out should have you sorted. As far as sleep health goes, cling on to any sort of regularity you can get your hands on, because quality sleep health is going to pretty much influence everything I laid out on that sheet there with all the arrows and things. But other than that, it's probably worth doing the kitchen sink approach, as you'd call it. So pretty much throw everything at it and see what sticks. Blackout curtains, use a fan, use a white noise machine to block out the noise, as well as earplugs and an eye mask. Even though you have blackout curtains, have some magnesium before bed. I don't know about melatonin, it's a bit double-edged because it can overhang into the next day, but yeah, see what works. A sleep tracker can help give you some qualitative feedback and, help things dial in a bit more. And then you can actually see when you get another job how much it was actually killing you, because the feedback on here will be like, you did good, lad. And my last piece of advice is, just sleep on the job, dude. I'm sure those ER patients can just sort themselves out. Like, they're adults. Most of them.